term limits in Congress, Senate, the President's seat, and in local municipalities and positions is important. And I'm going to explain to you why these things seem to be relevant today. And we're going to start in 1963 with the governor taking the seat in Ohio named James Rhodes. Now, most people called him Dusty Rhodes, and he served Ohio basically from 1963 until 1983. And the significance of that has to do with John Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Standard Oil was sold off after James Rhodes stepped out of the office in Columbus, but the remnants of deals made between what John Rockefeller owned, which was Ohio, Standard Oil, and the people who were the purchasers of this company, which is British Petroleum and Marathon. When we go back and take a look at a conversation I had with some Clinton County farmers from the Harveysburg, Wilmington area, they asked me to do what I do, which is research. It's something that I've always had a passion for. I went to college for and studied at Wright State and Sinclair Community College. I had over 110 hours, I believe, when I left. A lot of that was making up for the education that I neglected to get in high school. So don't let it fool you. I'm still country dumb. I just ain't plumb dumb. So when I went to go look, and I took the information that they gave me, which was that George Hinkle of Lebanon Citizens National Bank, you may have seen the signs that say Hinkle Schuler throughout Warren County, went through and purchased up property in bits and pieces back in the late 50s, early 60s, when I-71 was in its pre-planning phase. The land that he purchased seemed to coincide with a lot of the farmers getting the shaft, really, when it came to the actual value that he sold it for in a relatively short period of time compared to the purchasing price that he was telling them that he would give, which seemed like a deal to them at the time, because they didn't have access to the James Rhodes maps that the surveyors put out for what is now Interstate 71. So I went on a sort of information-seeking mode after that, with that subconscious thought in my head, and started to accumulate information about things like Emerald Marketing, the place I worked. Vice President Seminarelli, who was one of the people who stopped in a site that I ran in Centerville, Ohio by 675, who is the Vice President of Marathon Oil, the parent company of Speedway and Emerald Marketing. As I watched, I sort of got deja vu when it came to the Alston Landing purchase by the strip mall and Kroger's of the property, because it did not happen. They had to lease the property from the owners, which was Marathon Oil. And I thought, wow, that's the same thing that happened to these farmers. There was a piece of property that was relatively undesirable, except for Wright Brothers Airport. There was really not a lot going on there. And why they would purchase this amount of land, Marathon, and then sit on it to develop the largest C-store that Speedway had to offer back in the 2003 to 2005 time, and then put on and off ramps from 675 and 75 was a masterfully designed investment. And you have to wonder if it's that same type of investment strategy used to undermine the work that these farmers in Clinton County had put into the land that they had farmed for so many years. Was it their time for the payment back for the sweat that they put into that land when it became valuable to oil companies such as Standard Oil, which is now Marathon and British Petroleum? And to get the answers, you would have to go ask Vice President Ciminarelli or a senator who came from that Lebanon Citizens National Bank circle of friends, Senator Steve Wilson in the 7th District. I'm sure everything's on the up and up, so they shouldn't have a problem answering the questions. And the person I think that should ask those questions is the person who represents those districts in Congress. Here locally, it's Greg Landsman. He seems like a fine man for the job, and I think that it would be beneficial to us all to know if these investment strategies, and you're talking about two liberal-minded people, I like to call them open-minded people, to investigate this and see if some of the monies that are invested in this Donald Trump regime that broke into the White House with threats of killing people were financed by any of these major players. Because if they were, it could be that British Petroleum invested in Donald Trump. And if so, under the Patriot Act guidelines that I'm aware of, they are foreigners. And the foreign investments come with SARS reports from the United States banks, which may have been used to withdraw money at Rob Portman's dinners and banquets that he does for large contributors to come and talk to presidents during presidential elections, as well as senators and congressmen. So locally, here in Waynesville, Ohio, I went to school with a man who was city manager back when Charlie Sanders had all the issues here in Waynesville. His name's Rod Smith. He considers himself a Goldwater Republican, at least from when I knew him. And he should be able to help us and assist us in this investigation to make sure that we enforce the laws that are on the books when it comes to terrorism. And if we're able to, go back, get these SARS reports, give them to the Attorney General in New York so that she can take her case to the Supreme Court and make them make an ultimate decision in the United States of America. We lost a president once for wiretapping, and that's what the Patriot Bill is about. It's about added surveillance for federal groups like the DEA, FBI, CIA, ICE, and all the rest, so that they can listen and come into our homes even when we're not aware, without warrants. Attached to that bill, in somewhat of a genius move, is the financing of terrorism in regards to Al-Qaeda and foreign networks who might want to do harm to our government, which is exactly what Donald Trump's regime did. So look for Ciminarelli and BP and find out. Because if these bank accounts have SARS reports attached, and they have diverse bank accounts because they're large distributors of fuel, like the Mark Hazelwoods of Pilot Flying J, we can go through and see if Marathon joined in with BP and make sure that we understand that sometimes terrorists come in the form of Timothy McVeigh. They do damage to the United States of America from within, and they're not foreigners. And if we can't do that, then I suggest that they take their listening skills, go watch the Snowden movie, and revisit this Patriot Act, which I have bitched about since it first came out, and